to the broadcast on the Focalizer Network, the only show that covers all your favorite fandoms, with your host, Justin Thomas.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the broadcast. I am Justin Thomas, of course, and today we will be discussing symbolisms and connections with Game of Thrones. And the topic will be Rhaegar's harp and why we think it's the key to Lyanna Stark's harp.
This one's for you. Check it. Yo. On the real, your boy is a hip-hop player, but for this joint here, I'll play the role of King Slayer. See toe-to-toe, blow for blow, we can fight G.
When you're trying to decipher the works of George R.R. Martin, it's safe to assume you've gone mad, or you will become mad very shortly. But nonetheless, we do it. I do it. The good, crazy people from our network at Focalizer do it, and if you're watching or listening to this, there's a good chance that you do it. So don't be ashamed, but also probably sit on a theory and think it over before you go running around the internet with your Varys is a merman theory, or in my case, last season's epic Arya in the Wayfarer, essentially Tyler Burden from Fight Club theory, that I was so sure about until a week later, Dan and Dave slapped me in the face with a big-ass dose of poor writing and lack of continuity.
I think you've got to start wondering, what the hell is this plot?
She's left-handed, Dan and Dave. Why was she using her right hand to pay for her loudly announced voyage out of Bravos when being tracked by a faceless man? But
I think you've got to start wondering, what the hell is this plot?
But I'm over that now. I've learned my lesson. It's probably best to actually help connect some of the dots in some of these maddening theories and storylines, and hopefully be able to bring to your guys' attention some aspects that you might not have thought about yet, and maybe we can solve some of these riddles or prophecies or unresolved storylines together as a community. And that way, if we are all wrong, then we're all wrong, right? And no big deal. Nobody feels dumb. And if we're right, then I'm right. So that works out for me. So we will be using the folklore and symbolism behind the famous harp that plays more than a few notes in one of the most debated theories. I'm, of course, speaking of the whereabouts or status of the prince who thought he was promised something, at least, Rhaegar Targaryen. So first off, a little unscripted disclaimer here. This video has taken a little longer than expected to come out, mostly because I was originally doing another vid discussing a upcoming blog from Joanna, who is my trusted friend and colleague over at Focalizer, and the base idea was the connection she had made between the symbolism of the harp in Celtic mythology and Rhaegar's harp. And that is fascinating in itself, but as I always do, I went out and conducted some of my own research on the subject before posting my video. And in the late hours of the night, I came across a 12th century pre-Christian Irish oral tale known as the Dagda harp. Now, this was a joy to stumble across, and I'm also not ashamed to admit that pretty much the equivalent to opening up a big-ass can of worms right before I thought I had concluded the video/podcast, whatever you're listening to this on. To give you a better idea what I mean, the Celtic symbolism in connection to a Song of Ice and Fire's famously spoken of and yet never seen musical instrument of choice, the harp for the famous Prince Rhaegar, was already established by Joanna's original research sense. Most importantly, it's a symbol of immortality of the soul. And that's big for a character that has a story and fate that is so often debated and dissected by fans looking to prove one theory or another. Almost all these theories, by the way, revolve around Rhaegar being alive and not dead. The word harp, actually, in the novels is mentioned 52 times. Rhaegar's harp is specifically mentioned 11 times. And this is a harp from somebody that, barring any theories or any new information, just taking the text at face value, is dead. That leads me to believe that George wants us to be aware and maybe think a little bit about harps. So that's what we are doing. This story, which wasn't even a written story for many centuries after its creation, this is like pre-Christian era Ireland. This story of the Dagda's harp, which I'm about to play, has a lot of connects with Rhaegar's story. And I think that this fits pretty well. And I think this is another connection that I've scoured the internet. I couldn't find it anywhere. So just something to take into consideration when people are trying to prove their theories, are looking to craft new theories. We're not necessarily looking to craft new theories. We're looking to make intelligent, well thought out and researched connects. The point being, George obviously likes to pick and choose from history and fiction. He takes a little bit from actual historical figures and events, and he picks a little bit from, mythology and folklore and so on. A good example is the War of the Roses connection. Everybody knows that. But even with that, it's never so simple. It's not like Robb Stark is completely Edward of York. Robert Baratheon is also Edward of York. And Dany is got a lot in common with Henry VII, Henry Tudor, but she also has a lot in common with Cleopatra. There's always just bits and pieces, and that's what makes his work so good. And when you can kind of look at the multiple connections, sometimes I feel when George writes, he doesn't just put a spotlight on certain aspects. I feel like he puts a fucking floodlight on him. And I believe this with the harp too, when you start looking at how many times it's mentioned and its magical abilities and just the connections. It's very interesting. And of course, this story is not the exact story of Rhaegar and Lyanna at all, but there are 4 to 5 solid connections that I would like to believe that George drew from. So these are not videos that are just telling you, oh, this is how it is now, we figured it out. The last one we did, which people seem to like for the most part, the bittersweet connection, which a lot of people took that as we're just saying it's definitely Bran's dream. I said flat out in the video, I don't believe that. It's just a connection, and it's something that can be taken metaphorically or figuratively. We are just putting out possibilities and only brought up because we feel that they have a good amount of substance and are intelligently researched. But here are a few of the things to look for when you're listening to this short story that I'm going to play. Going off Celtic mythology, a harp possesses the power for those who hear it to essentially go into extreme fits of laughter or madness. It's able to invoke just very strong feelings of any kind, depending on the notes that it hits. Another big thing is its silver strings, which are mentioned multiple times. And also, one of the biggest ones is it possesses the power to actually put the seasons back in order. Last but not least, it also gives certain warriors the ability to skin change, aka warg. So with no further ado, here is a short excerpt from the Dagda's Harp.
It is said that there were 2 quite different kinds of people in Ireland. One set of people with long dark hair and dark eyes called Fomorians, and another race of people who were golden-haired and blue-eyed. The golden-haired people had a great chieftain who was also a kind of high priest who was called the Dagda, and this Dagda had a wonderful magic harp. The harp was beautiful to look upon, mighty in size, made of rare wood and ornamented with gold and jewels. It had wonderful music in its strings, which only the Dagda could call out. When the men were going out to battle, the Dagda would set up his magic harp and sweep his hand across the strings, and a war song would ring out, which would make every warrior buckle on his armor, brace his knees, and shout, "Forth to the fight!" Then, when the men came back from battle, weary and wounded, the Dagda would take his harp and strike a few chords, and as the magic music stole out upon the air, every man forgot his weariness and the smart of his wounds, and thought of the honor he had won, of the comrade who had died beside him, and of the safety of his wife and children. Then the song would swell out louder, and every warrior would remember only the glory he had helped win for the king, and each man would rise at the great tables, his cup in his hand, and shout, "Long live the king!" There came a time when the Fomorians and the golden-haired men were at war, and in the midst of a great battle, while the Dagda's hall was not so well guarded as usual, some of the chieftains of the Fomorians stole the great harp from the wall where it hung, and fled away with it. They fled fast and far through the night, until they were a long way from the battlefield. Then they thought they were safe, and they turned aside into a vacant castle by the road, and sat down to a banquet, hanging the stolen harp on the wall. The Dagda, with 2 or 3 of his warriors, had followed hard on their track, and while they were in the midst of their banqueting, the door was suddenly burst open, and the Dagda stood there with his men. Some of the Fomorians sprang to their feet, but before any of them could grasp a weapon, the Dagda called out to his harp on the wall, "Come to me, O my harp." The great harp recognized its master's voice and leapt from the wall, whirling through the hall, sweeping aside and killing the men who got in its way. It sprang to its master's hand. And the Dagda took his harp and swept his hand across the strings in 3 great solemn chords. The harp answered with the magic music of tears, and as the wailing harmony smote upon the air, the women of the Fomorians bowed their heads and wept bitterly. The strong men turned their faces aside, and the little children sobbed. Again the Dagda touched the strings, and this time the magic music of mirth leapt from the harp. And when they heard that music of mirth, the young warriors of the Fomorians began to laugh. They laughed till the cups fell from their grasp and the spears dropped from their hands, while the wine flowed from the broken bowls. They laughed until their limbs were helpless with excess of glee. Once more the Dagda touched his harp, but very, very softly. And now a music stole forth as soft as dreams, as sweet as joy. It was the magic music of sleep. When they heard that, gently, gently, the Fomorian women bowed their heads in slumber. The little children crept into their mothers' laps. The old men nodded, and the young warriors drooped in their seats and closed their eyes. One after another, all the Fomorians sank into sleep. When they were all deep in slumber, the Dagda took his magic harp, and he and his golden-haired warriors stole softly away and came in safety to their own homes again.
So in a continuation of this story, the Dagda's son, who was also a famous harp player and played a harp that had silver strings, just as Rhaegar's harp has silver strings, he actually had the power to attract birds and wild animals and also skin change, like I said earlier, aka warg. And the son is actually the great warrior and is said to be able to change the order of seasons. So what do we do with this newfound information? I don't think that it's really news that the harp is important. I just think that the specific connections definitely add a little bit of weight and substance behind some possible theories or opinions on unresolved storylines and so on. So I'll end this video with some new possibilities that I see that this information can and should be applied to if you're considering possible outcomes for either Rhaegar and Lyanna, even Jon's unresolved storyline, especially the question a lot of us have concerning his nightmares or dreams of him visiting the Winterfell crypts. So first, let's run down the most prominent mentions of Rhaegar and his harp really quick. I'll start with my favorite, and usually the person that has the most entertaining quotes in the show, and that's Littlefinger and his thoughts on this topic when visiting the crypts with Sansa. He makes a statement that furthers the importance and power of Rhaegar's harp. Here is the quote: "A harp can be as dangerous as a sword in the right hands." Of course, he said that in a far creepier manner, but that's Littlefinger for you. Next, I'm going to jump to some book references. The first time that Rhaegar is mentioned with a harp is in Dany's 4th chapter in A Clash of Kings, which is during the House of the Undying. This is the first time that we hear the Song of Ice and Fire too. And then in Dany's next chapter, she asks Jorah about Rhaegar's harp, and he confirms that he played a silver-stringed harp, which obviously relates to the lore in the specific story of the Dagda. After these 2 chapters, the word harp is mentioned twice, both in Jon chapters actually, in which Mance tells him the story of Bael the Bard, and it's pretty interesting. It's a nice parallelism linking Bael and Mance and Jon and Rhaegar. I'll definitely leave some links below for anybody interested in further investigating these topics, like especially the Bael and Mance. I think the next time that Rhaegar's harp is brought up is by Barristan in Dany's 1st chapter of A Storm of Swords. He says he's seen Rhaegar play his harp with his own eyes. Jorah replies, "So have thousands of others," indicating Rhaegar's harp is well known in Westeros. This also fits quite well with the story and folklore. In Dany's 4th chapter of A Storm of Swords, we learn of Summerhall and that Rhaegar loved his harp more than his lance. Again, this reaffirms the significance of the silver harp. And then we have Cersei's 5th chapter in A Feast for Crows, where we get the infamous Maggie the Frog flashback. But Cersei also recalls Rhaegar's visit to the Rock and how he made her weep with his silvery harp. Again, people associate Rhaegar with this melancholic harp and silver strings. And then the final instance, as of right now, where Rhaegar's harp is mentioned is in the Griffin Reborn John Connington's chapter in A Dance with Dragons. Here, as with the other instances, we get the impression that Rhaegar and his harp go everywhere together, and that virtually all of Westeros is aware of his somber harping. And now on to what I consider to be the two most prominent theories out there right now, and this is the first one is Jon's nightmares. Jon has had reoccurring dreams of the crypts beneath Winterfell since he left home. Many people assume that that's something that has something to do with something being hidden in the crypts. This goes from everything from dragon eggs in Lyanna's tomb, which would imply a Targaryen wedding. Remember, polygamy wouldn't be out of the question for a prince, and especially a Targaryen prince. And also, Rhaegar's heart being inside of Lyanna's tomb. I don't know how I feel about that one. I know the harp obviously make a video about how important it is, but I do believe it could be in the crypts. I don't know if I necessarily think that it would be in her tomb. I don't know if that is enough to tell Jon his lineage. And I also kind of see these these fever dreams or nightmares he's having as like Westeros's Ancestry.com, but it's through like the Werewood net, and it's terrible. So hopefully Bran or Howland Reed gets his ass out of the swamp and comes down and tells him who his parents are. But I definitely see the harp being in Winterfell, and Ned did make a tomb for his brother and for Lyanna, which technically breaks the Starks tradition or rules, whatever you want to consider them. Only lords of Winterfell traditionally were supposed to get the actual stone tombs. Here's an excerpt from Game of Thrones, and this is one of Jon's nightmares. And then I find myself in front of the door to the crypts. It's black inside, and I can see the steps spiraling down. Somehow I know I have to go down there, but I don't want to. I'm afraid of what might be waiting for me. The old kings of winter are down there sitting on their thrones with stone wolves at their feet and iron swords across their laps, but it's not them I'm afraid of. I scream that I'm not a Stark, that this isn't my place, but it's no good. I have to go anyways. That's actually a excerpt from Game of Thrones, shortly after Jon leaves Winterfell. So I have one more main connection that I would like to bring up, and then just a few last notes. But this one is obviously a big one. Lyanna's supposed abduction. I don't think many of us have ever, or at least still, believe Lyanna was taken against her will by Rhaegar, but maybe she was willing, but it wasn't a willingness that came naturally when we consider this new information and series of mythical stories of the harp invoking strong emotional connections and feeling. Certainly could have been used to manipulate Lyanna in this situation, especially when I consider Rhaegar's obsession with fulfilling prophecy. And there's a standout incident that might allude to this during the feast of the tournament of Harrenhal. Rhaegar played one of his sad, beautiful songs on his harp and made Lyanna weep. Rhaegar seems to have had, she definitely, from what I've gotten from the material, I don't think that Lyanna was one to shed tears in public over a pretty boy playing a harp, but she seemed to be struck on this occasion. And again, these are things that have already been out there. Obviously, this has been being talked about before the show even aired. So I'm just highlighting the symbolic meaning of the harp and all the folklore and these specific stories that I've cited, just kind of add a little bit more weight. And again, I'm not saying that it's for sure happening, just drawing some connections here. So just a few last notes here. I just want to last and not least say that the harp's symbolic meaning of immortality of the soul definitely gives a little bit more weight behind the theory of Rhaegar possibly still being alive, posing as anyone. These theories go from Mance to Jaqen H'ghar. So that was actually the original premise for this video. That's why it kind of went a little bit long, and these aren't going to usually go as long as this, but I can't ignore the information once it comes across the desk. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you guys have a conversation. And again, we're not trying to make any bold claims or anything. I'm just trying to find some some information that hasn't been out there yet, and it's kind of hard with Thrones, but it's really interesting to do. I think that George's writing style is one of the most unique styles out there, at least for our generation, for sure, if not the last century. So we just want to have a conversation. We want to have you guys go on there. We want you guys to go read the blogs at vocalizershow.com. Bran, who goes by Bran the Builder, just joined the Vocalizer team, and he had his first blog earlier this week, and he's working on some other awesome stuff. He is years beyond me when it comes to Game of Thrones, and he is he's mostly a book only guy, but he's very knowledgeable. He had a great blog on dualities that he put out earlier, and I really encourage everybody to go check him out. And obviously Joanna's last blog was a big hit, and everybody liked it for the bittersweet, and she's gonna have her blog, the original premise for this, and I'm pretty sure she's going to be adding in some of the other stuff too that should be out either when this video comes out, which should be on Friday, or latest Saturday. But yeah, I mean, we're here to just have a conversation, like I said. So if you guys already knew all this, I'm sorry, but I did scour Reddit and everything, and I did not see anything about Dagda, at least. So it gets a little bit crazy with all these 12th century folklore stories. With the Dagda story, we have a number of like possible loose connections and maybe even inspiration for everything from the Tower of Joy, which is a real loose one, but definitely the prince that was promised with the son of Dagda, who Dagda definitely seems to, if George did use this, Dagda would definitely be Rhaegar, who seems to fit the description. His son fits the description of Jon, who just so happens to be able to set the seasons in order. So some of it's reaching, but some of it's right on, and if you seek through it. So there's lots of different texts on it, and this is like an ongoing, this is just like the tale of Dagda's Harp. This is a series of stories, so I will link all the information below, like always. My name is Justin Thomas. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe. We are getting some good support from you guys on the YouTube channel now, and that's making it easier for us to make videos instead of just podcasts, where you might just abandon the podcasts for Thrones, at least, and stuff that we want to at least throw up some video and some pics and stuff. The Black Sails review is coming back this weekend, and for anybody that's interested in the series recap that I'm doing, make sure to check out the introduction to the series. It's a 2-part that I did, talking about the historical period and stuff like that, kind of setting the scene. But go to vocalizershow.com and check out what we're doing. And if you guys are interested in writing blogs or being on a cast, or even doing anything with creating content for these fandoms, contact me, because that's why I am running the site. That's why I pump money into this. We're not making money at all, but the plan right now is to just get a lot of like-minded people, and that's why we brought on Bran. He's a real intelligent guy, and I really encourage you to go and check out his blogs. We got Jezebel, who's a great writer, who she covers a number of different series, which really embraces what I'm really going for with the Vocalizer network, not just talking about Game of Thrones or Westworld or Black Sails, to really kind of branch out. So make sure to check her stuff out, and the Joanna stuff, of course. I know you guys love the Thrones stuff, so yeah, make sure to go to the website. And like I said, we are always looking for new talent and stuff like that. And also, this should be coming out on Friday, but 7 o'clock Eastern, I will be doing a live stream with PackMules, a YouTuber that you guys probably are all very well aware of, and great guy. Just got acquainted with him, but we're going to do a live stream and kind of just shoot the shit, and it'll be on 7 o'clock this Saturday, 7 o'clock Eastern, so make sure to go over there to his channel and check it out. I'm excited just to shoot the shit with him, and what my plans are for the podcast, YouTube channel, Vocalizer, and so on. So you guys make sure to like and subscribe. Very important, and I will see you guys tomorrow night.
On the real, your boy is a hip-hop player, but for this joint here, I play the role of King Slayer. See, toe-to-toe, blow for blow, we can fight, G. But word to Jamie, there are no other men like me. This industry is in a roughed-up state. Cats front so tough, you call the bluff, they fake. And we all know it too, we just love to pretend. Use my tongue as a sword, slice it with the pointy end. And friends can turn to enemies in an op-link. My click together firm like a master's chain link. We got skills, and yes, we're so ill. Our brotherhood was formed underneath the hollow hill. For real, shit so sad, it's almost funny. Young niggas, little fingers, steady chasing after money. Dummies, I do it for the love like Stark and sit alone with my honor in a dungeon in the dark. In this Game of Thrones, it's eye for eye. There is no middle ground, you either win or die. You gotta watch the cats who watch your back. You can get hit quick, man, and that's a fact. Politics and bedfellows, what's real, who's fake? The surprise in your eyes when your man goes snake. It can happen to your fam or you all alone. We go big, we go home, we play this Game of Thrones. Lots of fake shit. Nowadays the realm is a snake pit. No gravity, you weightless, not a chance to escape it. I take shit from no man and never compromise. Tread water, hold my head, navigate the endless lies.